Autumn has been home of physical learning to children and youth in communities and schools for the last 10 years. Our focus has been dance. Every child deserves an opportunity to engage in physical learning. Self-discovery of every child starts when given an opportunity to play and express themselves. We've witnessed restoration and diverse levels of development as we worked with children and youth of all ages. Autumn Studios will be hosting the first ever Sports Science Global Symposium on 1st December 2022. The event will be live on the Autumn Studios Kampala YouTube channel. The symposium will bring educationists, parents, sports trainers to the table to discuss how best to increase physical learning in curricula globally. That is the beginning of innovation in their world. Subscribe to our channel and be part of this event. Contribute to the conversation, and let's give our children a relevant education. Welcome to Autumn Studios. My name is Jacqueline Tumusime. Autumn has been home of physical learning to children and youth in communities and schools for the last 10 years. Our focus has been dance. Every child deserves an opportunity to engage in physical learning. Self-discovery of every child starts when given an opportunity to play and express themselves. We've witnessed restoration and diverse levels of development as we worked with children and youth of all ages. Autumn Studios will be hosting the first ever Sports Science Global Symposium on 1st December 2022. The event will be live on the Autumn Studios Kampala YouTube channel. The symposium will bring educationists, parents, sports trainers to the table to discuss how best to increase physical learning in curricula globally. That is the beginning of innovation in their world. Subscribe to our channel and be part of this event. Contribute to the conversation, and let's give our children a relevant education. Welcome to Autumn Studios. My name is Jacqueline Tumusime. Autumn has been home of physical learning to children and youth in communities and schools for the last 10 years. Our focus has been dance. Every child deserves an opportunity to engage in physical learning. Self-discovery of every child starts when given an opportunity to play and express themselves. We've witnessed restoration and diverse levels of development as we worked with children and youth of all ages. Autumn Studios will be hosting the first ever Sports Science Global Symposium on 1st December 2022. The event will be live on the Autumn Studios Kampala YouTube channel. The symposium will bring educationists, parents, sports trainers to the table to discuss how best to increase physical learning in curricula globally. That is the beginning of innovation in their world. Subscribe to our channel and be part of this event. Contribute to the conversation, and let's give our children a relevant education. Welcome to Autumn Studios. My name is Jacqueline Tumusime. Autumn has been home of physical learning to children and youth in communities and schools for the last 10 years. Our focus has been dance. Every child deserves an opportunity to engage in physical learning. Self-discovery of every child starts when given an opportunity to play and express themselves. We've witnessed restoration and diverse levels of development as we worked with children and youth of all ages. Autumn Studios will be hosting the first ever Sports Science Global Symposium on 1st December 2022. The event will be live on the Autumn Studios Kampala YouTube channel. The symposium will bring educationists, parents, sports trainers to the table to discuss how best to increase physical learning in curricula globally. That is the beginning of innovation in their world. Subscribe to our channel and be part of this event. Contribute to the conversation, and let's give our children a relevant education. Welcome to Autumn Studios. My name is Jacqueline Tumusime.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to the inaugural Sports Science Global Symposium 2022. We're streaming live from Uganda to the world as we celebrate and advocate for more physical learning for our children and youth in education to accelerate innovation. My name is Tumusime Jacqueline, your host tonight. Today being World AIDS Day, we would like to send our heartfelt condolences to those that have lost their loved ones to HIV and AIDS in the past decades. Please join me as we take a moment of silence in prayer. Special thank yous to everyone that's logged in today. It's with great honor and privilege that I take this opportunity to thank my spiritual authority and Papa, Apostle Grace Lubega, who made sure this event is a success. Sir, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for your counsel. Thank you for always being available when I sought your guidance. This day was made possible by you in all forms. It is such an honor to be pastored by you. Today being a Thursday, we know you're preparing to minister to nations this evening at Phaneroo. We're expectant to join in after this conference. Might I add to the audiences around the world, my spiritual father is an athlete himself, and he plays basketball 3 times a week. So I cannot go without making mention of the support he has been in this venture as we started out. Thank you, sir, and we honor what is upon your life. I would also like to recognize the men and women joining us from around the world in all your capacities, all protocol observed, fathers, mothers, educationists, sports scientists, investors, edupreneurs. It's on this note that I would like to also welcome all our speakers tonight. Dr. Christina Johnson from South Africa, my second dance instructor from many years, friend. Miss Dorothy Tuma, who has been a mentor since 2012 when I started out in this business. She realized my potential and always drew me back to my passion, physical education. Miss Gracie Banda, one of my instructors from many years ago, and Mr. Fred Chigundu Musoke, the Kampala Music School director, who over the years has partnered with us at Autumn Studios and has been a committed client since we started out. Miss Jade Hall, thank you for accepting our invitation to share your wisdom with us. Miss Mildred Gamba, a colleague in education and longtime friend, we thank you so much for accepting to speak at this event and share your wisdom and knowledge in physical education. Mrs. Audrey Dralega, who was tirelessly given counsel when I sought it regarding education. And lastly but not least, Miss Alison Bach, a friend, instructor in many ways. We are delighted to have you share your wisdom with us as well. We honor and recognize your presence tonight. A special thank you to Apt Media, Mr. Solomon Tumwesije, our live stream partner, and Mr. Hector Motebi of Hydrogen Studios, who've supported this project since I mentioned it. You are a pillar of strength, and we honor that. Lastly but not least, I would like to thank my parents who have greatly contributed to who I am and have become today, giving me all the opportunities in education, the access I had in sports growing up, swimming, playing tennis, badminton, the dance classes. I believe all were for this moment. As you listen in today, I encourage each of you, each of us, to find our part in education for the sake of our children. The answers to a better education are with us. We can no longer put a demand on governments. We are the governments. We can no longer put a demand on edupreneurs. We are those entrepreneurs. We have the mandate to provide means and ways in which today's education takes on more physical learning for our children to accelerate innovation from which the crisis of this world should be solved. Today marks the launch of a dream I've had for over 10 years. 10 years ago, we started out Autumn Ventures Africa, an organization that was aimed on giving children and youth fun ways to learn through dance. We started out in school clubs in the city and later in our own studio. Our aim and hope was that all children would have an opportunity to experience physical learning. At the time, we knew to do only dance, and we taught it. Year in, year out, it became more apparent that we weren't availing opportunities to all our children, but to a few that could afford it, and those whose parents appreciated it. And it ached us so much. We didn't reach those that called us to far off locations. In those last 10 years, we have learned about how to run physical learning centers. The processes, the systems of management have been drawn. On our hands, we have challenges, the biggest of them being that we were few trainers with little training. Along the way, we acquired curricula, we trained, and yet still we didn't find this curricula sufficient. But we were faithful with what we were given. The lockdown alone showed us a great deal of insufficiencies. We still couldn't reach the numbers that called on us. Try as we may, adapting to the new ways of life to teach found gaps we couldn't fully address. It is in the spirit that it all became more apparent that we understood our part in education. If we did understand our part in education, we had to effectually multiply ourselves. We had the dream to have all children across cities and nations access physical education. Surely, we weren't going to do it alone. We had to train more teachers, equip them with tools to run their own businesses, set up in communities across the city and villages to avail this form of education to as many children as we have always envisioned. The Sports Science Global Symposium is the first ever annual event that will bring together educationists, sports scientists, parents, edupreneurs, and many other stakeholders from around the world to discuss how best we can evolve and become more kinesthetic and innovative in our teaching for our children. Education in this age should be more physically engaging than it has ever been before if it's going to be of value to the learner and have impact on our world now. Currently, in schools, a 12-week term has got 180 hours of learning. Of these hours, only 24 hours are given to physical learning. In some schools, this type of learning is non-existent and almost extinct, as schools have made it an option, an extracurricular, a club that's set aside for those whose parents can afford it. Instead, schools have taken to academics, and the focus has shifted from learning by doing to learning to pass exams for good grades. Notwithstanding, good grades have a place in academia, yet physical learning cannot be ignored any longer. In some countries, there aren't so many well-trained teachers, and most schools lack many more resources to carry out such learning consistently. We must ask ourselves, why and to what end is education for our children? What are the benefits of this education? What should the children be learning if they're going to give answers to crises in their time? Learners should have more options beyond the academic way in which developing one-sided approach to learning and excelling in exams without fully exploring other forms of learning. Physical learning has only been given to a few who dare compete and win, yet benefits of physical learning far surpass competition and awards. The latter is secondary. The solutions are among us today. Our role is to do one thing, to share from our hearts so that each person present tonight finds their part in education if these children and youth are going to be innovative enough to solve the crisis of this world in the coming ages. We can no longer leave this just to the teachers in schools. We must go back, revisit our value systems, start to integrate them in our curricula, create more, add physical activity. We have to build safe community centers, play centers, mini stadiums in our communities across the cities that children are able to access. Education is not done by only the teachers in schools, but by parents, people in the communities. Schools are where we further this education. Charity must begin at home, in our communities, and then later in our schools. It is on this note that we seek to bring benefits of this physical learning to remembrance, to bring about education reforms in schools globally by causing all stakeholders in learning to come to table and withdraw the purpose of learning in a world full of crisis, which need innovative solutions for the coming ages. The onus is on us today to take up the mantle and run with it. History will be our judge when we are long gone. Did we serve and prepare the next generation for their world? Did we leave them to figure it out without lending a hand? And to what end was the learning we provided for the next generations? And now, allow me welcome our first speaker tonight. He started learning piano when he was 3 and went on to attain LRSM in piano performance and a diploma, ABRSM in piano teaching, and in flute, and a diploma in ABRSM in flute performance, grade 8 in voice. In 1998, he won Kenya Young Classical Musician Competition in the senior category and has since been invited to be on the jury of this competition. His extensive performing career includes playing title role in The Marriage of Figaro, piano recitals in Edinburgh, Malawi, Nairobi, Kampala, flute and piano concertos with the Nairobi Orchestra, Kampala Symphony Orchestra, and at the Safaricom Classical Music Fusion Festival in Nairobi. In 2007, he had the honor of playing the piano recital for the Queen Elizabeth II during her visit to Uganda during Chogam. Mr. Chigundu is a principal conductor of the Kampala Music Orchestra and the Kampala Singers Choir. He's conducted ballet in Kampala and the Nairobi Orchestra in opera and symphonic concerts to a great acclaim, collaborating with soloists in cello and piano concerts, mostly in November 2019. Mr. Chigundu is also a jazz musician, has performed with several bands on local Ugandan scenes, including Kwela Band, Baksimba Waves. As a jazz flutist, he played with the inaugural Kampala Arts Ensemble, an ensemble of traditional instruments and Western instruments. This ensemble performed Afrofusion music at the concert in Amsterdam and at the 19th World Music Meeting in Holland. It's with great pleasure that I invite Mr. Fred Chigundu to the symposium tonight. Mr. Fred Chigundu, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Yes, I was invited to speak on, well, the general general topic here, but also to speak about the benefits and also some of the links between art and science. As Jackie mentioned in my biography, I am by training an engineer, so I am a scientist, but also I am an artist, as you've just heard. Throughout, if one explores out enough, one finds that there are actually many people who are involved in mathematics and also in music. And I didn't have to go very far. In my own home, my father was such an engineer and a musician as well. And in many ways, a lot of people have said I've taken in his footsteps, except he did more engineering at the time than I necessarily did. In terms of the content that we're talking about in physical learning, I think I'd like to speak to it from a point of view of musical learning. When we think of music, we ask ourselves, what is music? And music has sometimes been described as organized sounds or pleasing sounds. But according to where the word comes from, it's an art form whose medium is sound and silence, with common elements such as pitch, which govern melody and harmony, rhythm, which has several associations, dynamics, and sonic qualities of timbre and texture. And it's derived from the Greek word, the art of the muses. When we look at our lives generally, where do we hear and enjoy music? We hear music in concerts, when we're working out, in flights, when we're relaxing, and also that in society we find that we find music in different celebrations, at weddings, at birthdays, at anniversaries and graduations, funerals, parties, functions, and the list could go on. Now, why do we listen to music? And a lot of times it's a social activity. When we go to concerts, it's a place where people gather to listen to music. Beauty and appreciation of the art form. Music has very many different types of forms, genres that are associated with it. That we find different people have different forms they engage with, from classical to jazz to various fusions to world music. There's a huge span from which is covered. We listen to music sometimes based on our emotions, and based on our emotions, and also for elements of stress release, even at times. Now, music education is a field in which I have been involved in for a really long time, and it's a field of study associated with teaching and learning of music. It touches on all domains of learning, including the psychomotor domain, which is the development of skills, the cognitive domain, which is acquisition of knowledge, and in particular ways, and the ways it affects the domain include music appreciation and sensitivity. The incorporation of music training from preschool to post-secondary education is common in most nations, because involvement in music is considered a fundamental component of human culture and behavior. Music, like language, is an accomplishment that distinguishes us as human. So what are some of those benefits of actually learning an instrument? Some of those are just, and the list is really long, but there's a discipline involved in learning an instrument. There's a perseverance, there's creativity, there's teamwork involved when people start playing instruments in orchestras and bands, and there's physical development for specific tasks. This is something sometimes people don't even realize, that every instrument that has to be learned has a physical element to it. You have to work on posture. You've got to work on your breathing techniques. You've got to be physically able to handle that instrument. It's also, there's a pride and joy when people finally learn to figure out how to play the tune that is of their favorite show. There's a sense of achievement. And also some instruments have been known to offer long-term health benefits. Like on my own person, as a flautist, I play the flute and piano, but as a flautist, the development of my lungs to be able to handle the capacity has been a really big help because I'm asthmatic. But when I went into the doctor's once, and he did what they call a peak flow meter. It's a little tube you get in and blow hard. And he was very confused because he said, according to my peak flow meter, I should be fine. But when he listened to my chest, he could hear all this in there. And then his conclusion was that my lung capacity had developed so much more. And had my chest been that of an ordinary person, I should be unconscious, but I was still moving around. And so some of these things cannot be underestimated, and can also go on to show that that these benefits exceed way beyond the learning of music, but also in my university days, I was a swimmer, but this being able to do this meant my VO2 max was a little bit higher than most other people. What are some of those other benefits? It's been shown that learning music also helps build up your neural plasticity and neural density in the brain. It's been seen that new brain cells in children start developing after just 4 months of musical training. And also it has been shown that there's an increase, 30 to 40% increase in their math and spatial scores after only 2 years of learning piano. So other benefits have also been seen in terms of language development. The brain works harder, and then this additional skill that one learns has been seen to improve spatial and temporal skills amongst children who are learning music. In 1999, there was a research done in the US where they found that the College Entrance Examination Board found that students with 4 or more years of music studies scored 34 points higher than their peers in verbal scholastic aptitude tests in the SATs, and 18 points higher on maths. It's also been seen to show that learning music, especially in between the ages of 4 and 14, has a long-term impact in mental health, positive, and also it's been found that a study was done by Nina Kraus, who found that adults aged between the ages of 55 to 76 had much more activity in the region of the brain that processed sound, and has also been shown to have other beneficial effects even in diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So all in all, we can see that music education in this sense has a big impact. But as mentioned earlier, we see the correlation between maths and music, but also the correlation between that and physical education. As Jacqueline will know, we worked hand in hand together in a ballet studio, and doing music and dance go hand in hand, and learning to incorporate movements. And increasingly here at the Kampala Music School, we're working really hard to increase the amount of physical connection between one's learning of an instrument and learning of music, which especially amongst children is really, really powerful means of them learning to play an instrument, but also engaging with their musical space. So I think I'd just like to maybe wrap up my little presentation by just saying it's something that would be good to highly encourage. As Jackie mentioned in her opening speech, we have a big challenge in that sometimes these extracurricular activities are not highly appreciated by the general public, and especially in the spaces where people are not engaging with it. But we'd like to believe times are changing, and we have started a new project in which we're getting some more and more kids in some of the local schools to engage in music in this new way. And we're very excited. It's the project's only been going 3 months, but already the impact is really, really big. So thank you very much for listening, and happy to take any questions now or later, whichever way it will fall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fred Chigundu. It's also noted that in 2012 you were appointed the Executive Director of Kampala Music School, and you hold that post today, and you're leading a team of 24 teachers and 5 departments who work with children of all ages. You were recently also invited to be a board member of the Commonwealth Resounds, an organization seeking to identify and promote outstanding musical initiatives in Commonwealth countries, develop partnerships between artists from different cultural origins, and support training programs for young musicians. You have realized these objectives through performances, seminars, masterclasses, discussions, outreach works. And you are a married man and have ever-increasing musical children. Thank you, Mr. Fred Chigundu, for your presentation. We look forward to the questions that will be coming in online. We will, when we open the Q&A session a little later on in the conversation. Just allow me invite and welcome another former colleague of mine. We are always talking about physical learning for children. Miss Mildred Gamba is the head of secondary physical education at Rainbow International School. She is also the national sprints coach for Uganda. She's a track and field athlete who has represented Uganda at various international events and a multinational champion in 100 meters, 200 meters, and long jump. She's also the founder of Titan Banner Athletic Club, TBAC, that helps to empower girls through sports, and is the CEO of Gamba Athletics Foundation that aims to help the youth achieve their potential through sport. Miss Mildred Gamba, you're very welcome to this conversation today. We are honored that you could actually spare time. I know you're writing reports right now and trying to make sure school ends in time. And we're really privileged that you could just make this moment for us. Please take us away, Miss Mildred.
Thank you, Ms. Jackie, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to present my ideas and my view on the importance of physical activity for any students. Just because this is online, can everybody hear me? Am I breaking or everything is fine? Just a thumbs up would be okay for me. Okay, I need to share my screen. I'm just waiting on that. Okay, so basically, as a PE teacher, I've realized that it's very important for us and our children to participate in sport. And when I was growing up, I know like we had physical exercise as part of our curriculum. And I remember we would always look forward to the break time and the lunch time, would even miss lunch because we were playing. Then we didn't understand the value or the importance of it. And like Jackie mentioned, unfortunately, currently, it's a lot more focus on academics and getting the grades right and forgetting that actually the physical activity is more important. And having worked in an international school, we get to realize that universities nowadays are no longer looking for grades only. So even if your child has an A star or 15 A stars, they will ask you, what else have you been doing? Have you been involved in charities? Have you been involved in sport? They want an all-round child, not just somebody who is being academic. And the reason for this, there are very many reasons. So for example, when we look at sport, one of the most important things why children should participate in sports is because it keeps us healthy. Most of us will testify that if you fall sick, or maybe let's talk of our grandparents or our parents, when we take them to hospital, most of the times the results you get is they need to start walking, they need to get more active. And that is because they have not been active. They've been living a solitude lifestyle. And when you look at even our jobs, 90% of the time we're sitting on a computer and doing nothing. So if kids are active in sports, it helps to develop their cardiovascular fitness. This means that they're able to carry on daily from morning to 5, and they still have some energy left in the evening to be able to continue and do some work. Most of us, by the time we get back home, we're just slumping in the chair and we can't even get up to pick the remote, which really goes back to being able to allow us to be active. But then also, especially for children, when they're active in sports the whole time, it helps to increase their bone density. Because remember, children are still growing. When they're still young, their bones are like cartilage, and they keep getting harder and firmer as they go along. So when they keep doing physical activity, the bone density helps the bone density to increase, which makes them to later on in life avoid arthritis, which is a very common problem that we have as we are growing older. But then also there's something which is like good fitness levels. I mean, we all want to have very nice looking bodies. I mean, yeah, six pack, sure, take it away. And that's whereby I'm able to eat anything. If we encourage children to be involved in physical activity the whole time, then it helps them to have very good fitness levels. And what this does, it helps to improve their metabolism. That means every time they eat something, they're able to digest it very fast. Then we're going to have less issues with obesity, which is something that the world is fighting right now in schools, because a lot of kids are very obese. And this comes about with the kind of lifestyle we're choosing. We are so much into gadgets currently. So you find most of the time we are either here or we are here or we are here. So basically we are not moving around. When we were younger, we didn't have phones, the TV, well, there wasn't something so interesting, we couldn't binge watch. So you would have to be running around to your neighbors and invent games. And this is not there anymore. So this is why we actually really need to drum the importance of kids being active in school currently. And then also, sport helps people to develop leadership skills. You may wonder how. Well, if you're in a team, even if like lunchtime, if you want to really see how they develop their leadership skills, go and watch primary kids playing at lunchtime on their own, not an organized lesson, just children. You'll find that there's that one person who is the captain, who will always resolve all the conflict. There's this other person who is the one who always creates problems. So as you find that there's always a leader who develops, and sometimes there's that other one person who is the confidence booster. Like when you fall up, you're like, no, come on, get up, let's keep going. So in that, as they keep doing sports, they develop leadership skills. Because you also find that you have team captains. Because every time when they're going to play, they're like, okay, let's choose teams. I'll be a captain, or they're like, no, you need to be the captain. So in that way, they're changing roles and they're learning how to be leaders. But then also another thing that we really underestimate is how physical exercise helps us to boost our emotional fitness. And this is something that we underestimate a lot. But I'm pretty sure most of us, because the whole world was under lockdown, we can testify that during the lockdown, we realized the importance of just being able to walk out of your house, maybe go to the shop, take a walk, because just sitting in the room became a bit too much and you felt like you were being suffocated. So definitely when we have sports in school, these children it helps them to develop and boost their emotional fitness. And of course, what this does, it also helps to refresh their minds and creates happiness. A lot of the times, like as a PE teacher, when I see the kids, when they're out there playing on the field, you can see the joy on their face. Yes, it looks like physically you will be tired, true, but emotionally, you're not tired, you're happy because you're doing something you love to do. And what that does also is it helps to freshen your mind. I've experienced that in lockdown, when I went out to walk, when I came back, I felt a bit more refreshed. So imagine for children who are learning the whole day, if you give them that opportunity to just go out for 1 hour, they come back when they're refreshed and they're willing to learn more. Even their brain cells, more brain cells are recruited, and this is backed up by research. But then the most important thing is there's better academic performance. And this has been proved by various research, and I hope I would be able to share my screen because there's a very powerful image that I had. Yes, I am able to share my screen now. Yes. Just give me a minute. Can you see my screen?
We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, so I was talking about better academic performance. So of course, it helps us to improve our memory. Normally, when we learn, the first thing memory is something stored in the short-term memory. And of course, when you do it more, it's stored in the long-term memory. And when you learn throughout the day, so doing for 6 hours, the short-term memory is already clogged. So if you just keep adding on knowledge within that short time, then you find that there's no more learning taking place. But if you give them a short break within that time, even if 10, 15 minutes, and they can go out to just refresh their memory, then you'll find that they will learn much better, and they'll have a better academic performance. I'll explain this later on the last slide. And of course, develop a social life. I mean, we all need a social life, okay? And when I found that I've made a lot of friends all over the world because of sport. So I can say I have someone from Nigeria, Ghana, USA. Why? Because when I've traveled to present Uganda at different competitions, you always meet different people. And you find that you're so surprised by how much you share in common, even if you don't share the same things in common, but just the ability to be able to socialize. It makes it very easy for you to go to a place and easily adapt because you have something that you're looking forward to. So even for children, when they're new in school, just because they're able to socialize through physical activity, they have a common language, even if they have a language barrier, because they're speaking the same language, which is sport, they're all participating, they're having fun, it makes the children to easily develop a social life. And let's face it, we need it, because currently we're living, you have the child go from school to home, in the gate, just with the housemates or with you and gadgets. And our children are having less and less exposure to better social lives. But then also, sports in schools helps us to develop discipline, cooperation, and teamwork. As we know, in sports, without discipline, you go nowhere. A famous example I can give probably is Cristiano Ronaldo recently, for those of us who watch football, where he had a dispute with his coach and he was told not to play. He's not going to play. He was being subbed on and he wasn't happy with that. He walked off the team. And definitely what's happening, he's having to leave the team. You're never bigger than a team. And in sport, no matter how talented or excellent you are, the number one thing is discipline. And of course, this discipline that they're learning in sport carries on to other aspects of life. Because as an international athlete, one of the things I've learned is discipline, time management. My friends will tell you, like if we say we're leaving at 7, I'll be at the door at 6:45. And probably they're not even ready yet. Because I have learned in sport, if my coach says, we are training at 9 o'clock. It does not mean I arrive at 9 o'clock. It means I arrive at 8 o'clock, start warm up, start preparations. By the time the coach is arriving at 9 o'clock, I am ready to go. So that's discipline that is so important that we learn and carry on even in our lives, in academics, in business. If you have an exam, you know that my exam is starting at 10. I am not arriving at 10, but I am arriving before 10 to be ready for that exam. Cooperation, because you have to work with all kinds of people. So if you're in a class of 20, even if you don't like everybody, at some point you have to do teamwork. For example, if you're playing football is not a one-person game. Even if you're doing athletics or anything, it helps us to learn teamwork and cooperation. And these are skills that are transferable to every aspect of our lives. But if we deny our children some of these, then they don't really know how to enforce this. And so you end up having all these endless meetings about teamwork, team building. But if it has not been built from the school, it's very difficult for them to try and imagine having that in their lives. But then, of course, there's positive mentoring. As they're doing the sport, they're meeting different teachers, they're meeting different coaches. Even parents sometimes volunteer or cheer. Each of these persons have a different impact or mentoring. So for example, if I have a team of 6 people, they have different parents. And some of the parents, one parent might be a banker, one might be a soldier. And you'll find that the kids, this one might be interested in banking. Like, oh, your dad is a banker. talk to the person and you see how mentoring is happening. But it is also helping you to build social capital. And social capital is one of the things we need currently. And then, of course, develop a social life, which is almost the same thing like develop socially. Every Sunday, I know in England, Sundays is a day where people just go and have fun playing football. They just form different teams and just have fun playing football. And that is creating a social life. I also know, like, we have the Activate Uganda, they do this Harris run where people go and run, then they come and they sit down, drink a beer after. But it's not, the sport is bringing them together, but it is now helping them to create a social life around them. But then it also helps you to interact with very many people. And for me, the most important thing about having children participate in sport is enabling them to develop self-esteem. Because once you do not have self-esteem and lack self-confidence, however talented you are academically or anything, you will find that you're not able to succeed. So sport is one place where we allow you to make mistakes. You practice until you succeed. You will start to see little improvements happening, and every little improvement gives you encouragement. Every encouragement helps to boost your self-esteem, and then you become a risk taker and you know, okay, I tried this time and this time it didn't work, and next time it will work. And then lastly, of course, the biggest thing for sports in school is that it really does help for children. It does help to boost their mental ability. And this is a research that was done and published in the Journal of Sport and Exercise Science by Charles Hillman. So the first picture here, we have children who just sat for 20 minutes, sitting quietly, like all teachers want to do, not doing anything, just sit quietly. And the other one, we had another group of children walk for 20 minutes. As you can see, the children who walk for 20 minutes, the red area, their brain cells were more activated, okay? And of course, also research has shown that children who do exercise or who go out at play break and play around, they will come back to class and they're more attentive. Yes, they may not seem to be settled, but they are more attentive in class. And also they are way better behaved. Links again, sport helps to teach discipline. And it doesn't have to be something so big, and doesn't even have to just be for the kids. You can do simple things like a 10-minute walk around the house, do some push-ups, some sit-ups, anything to get your mind active. And academically, there was also a study still by Hillman, whereby they got kids to do a standard achievement test. So the kids who were doing physical exercise constantly, every time they were doing physical exercise, their results kept improving. And those who were not, their results were not improving. The higher the level of physical exercise, the better their grades got. So I would recommend all parents who are listening, teachers, let's please encourage our children to be involved in sport. It is not a waste of time that they're just playing around. And if you also notice, sport has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. If we look right now, the World Cup, the money that Qatar is raking in, all that is because of sport. And also sport is not just about playing. There are very many other things you can achieve. You can become a sports journalist, a psychologist, a nutritionist. There are very many things you can do, but let's encourage our children to participate in sports. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mildred Gamba. You've talked a lot about physical activity and how important it is. It's on this note that even before we go to our next presenter, I would like us to all maybe just roll your shoulders in, yeah? And twist and turn your head. You've been sitting for a long time right now. It's almost an hour, just as you listened in. Just keep exercising and keep stretching, and remember to sit tall. Before we move on to our next presentation by Miss Alison Buck, I would like to encourage you to send out the links to your friends and family and colleagues and people you know that this presentation and this conversation will be important to. Also subscribe on our YouTube page at Autumn Studios Kampala and follow us on Twitter at Autumn Studio 256. We'll be glad to keep you in tabs with what's happening at Autumn Studios and what's coming up. Our next speaker, Miss Alison Bach, has been teaching for more than 40 years in primary schools in native Ireland and abroad, in Tanzania, Uganda, Israel, and India. She graduated from Trinity College Dublin, CICE Training College, in the 70s. She has always had a passion for art and sport and understood them to be an essential part of our education. After working as a primary school principal for 21 years, she retired from teaching in 2014, but has taught occasionally in supply capacity since then. She speaks from a long-time experience, position, with a worldwide perspective. She has skied, mountaineered, scuba dived for more than 25 years and currently swims 2 or 3 times a week in the open sea, in the cool Atlantic Ocean. Dance has always been her passion, and she joined International Christian Fellowship in 1994, which really brought us in contact when I finally joined it myself. So welcome with me, Miss Alison Bach from Ireland, to share her experiences with us as a former teacher, a principal, and a lover of sport. Miss Alison, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. And yes, it's great to be here participating in this symposium today. And thanks for the invite. First, I would say I can agree with everything that our previous speaker, that's Mildred, has said, and much of what she said is what I was going to say. But I have worked at primary level, that's the 4 to 12-year-old age group, and all that she says about the benefits and necessity of sport and physical education in schools applies to that level and should start right at the very beginning of life and children's education. And that's my shout all the time, the importance of PE in primary school. And it's essential in my mind and in my experience that it's part of our curriculum, that it's not only an after-school activity or a playtime activity, which it should be, but that all children have access to physical education right from the very beginning of their education. And that's my experience. In our schools in Ireland, children have physical education as part of their daily or their weekly in-school curriculum experience. And it's so important, I think, that it's scheduled into the actual curriculum, and the training happens as well. That's another thing I will speak about in a minute. But all of what Mildred said about the benefits of physical education, particularly in the academic progress of a child and their achievement, I can agree with so much, because the science is there, the experience is there, the science that shows how what's happening in the body is borne out by the research, and the experience is there, because I know from teaching children for so long PE, as we call it, it's their favourite subject at school. Primary school, I sometimes do a little test or check to see which is your favourite subject. And invariably PE, physical education, comes top. Art maybe next, and then the academics. But they are not realising them at that early stage how much the PE and the art influence all of the rest of their education, their academic progress. Because exercise releases endorphins in the brain, and which gives that that good, happy feeling, and also stimulates brain activity. And I've seen from experience in Africa where people might be, children and adults, may be struggling with tiredness, with being long time actually studying something. And I would think that the brain activity is or sometimes minimal. When you take them out for physical activity, they come alive. We all come alive. We become active, and they're then returning to academic work is more effective, and because exercise improves the activity of the brain and the whole well-being. From just practical point of view, here in Ireland, what we do is we have an active school flag program in schools. That's something that's more recent. But going back 40 years ago, it was part of my training. And I believe that all teachers, primary school teachers, should be trained to teach PE in the schools. It was part of my training. It was part of my experience, but partly very much part of my training as a primary school teacher. And I believe it should be part of the training of all primary school teachers. And it should be scheduled into the school week. We have scheduled in at least 1 hour a week. It could be taken as 1 hour block or 2.5 hours of physical education for every class. It's inclusive. We include children with disabilities or no ability. So it shouldn't be aimed at just purely those who are competent, but everybody is encouraged and given the opportunity to participate. And I think that is so important. Those with ability or disability, that they're having the opportunity to experience PE. And our PE curriculum covers these strands: games, which will teach the skills of the various games; athletics, gymnastics, aquatics if you've got access to a pool or a water, dance, and outdoor pursuits. And in your year's planning, you will plan to teach 5 of those 6, I think it's about 6 strands, 5 of those 6 strands. You might not have access to water, so swimming might be out, but we generally block in a block of 8 weeks for all children at primary school to learn swimming. But that might not be possible in some places. But all of those are part of our curriculum: dance, gymnastics, athletics, games, outdoor pursuits and adventure, and aquatics. And they are what all our teachers are trained in. And now, PE in schools should be is carried on into secondary level, as our previous speaker said, with all those benefits but also will train and give an experience to individuals to carry on lifelong experience of sport and physical activity. And right now, I'm still swimming in the sea. And when other things close up, there's always the sea on the doorstep. And it's been such a blessing to be able to go socially, meet with one or two others, go for a swim, the well-being it brings, and if one sport closes because of age or physical disability, something else opens up, and that's so important. And then it also is important for the artistic and the creative aspect of life. And where our speakers spoke about on music and that, how important physical activity is there for the well-being of the musician. And also, with us, PE gives that opportunity for creativity, particularly in dance, because that's one of our strands, and but in other areas as well. And yes, I think hopefully I'm not running over time. It's very easy to end up speaking too long, but it is so important, I believe, to equip teachers to be able to deliver a physical education program in schools, to equip them with some basic equipment as well. And I would say balls and markers and are the most basic that should be supplied for all schools, wherever you are in the globe, that the children have some basic equipment and are able to access physical education from an early age. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that talk, Miss Alison Buck. Thank you so much for the years that you have, over the time, just come to Uganda to work with the children, especially in Mbale. Those were such memorable times that our children could benefit from your knowledge, and that you always carried the markers, yes, and all the artwork that was an added advantage to how you were teaching. And it's such an honor to have learned from you so much in the times that we've been to Mbale together. For a scuba diver, I feel you have some more years in scuba diving. Let's say 25 more. You've only been doing 25. So thank you very much for sharing, and I pray that you stay online for the questions that may come up and join the panel discussions perhaps, and maybe ask the panelists some questions or add to their conversation as well. And before I invite our next guest speaker, I would like to say thank you to Miss Mildred again for taking off time in your busy schedule to just, share about what physical education should be and is like in Uganda, because that experience then starts to draw the mark, and we can then build forward in this venture that we've started today. Our next speaker, I met Miss Dorothy Tuma in 2012. It was at a Women in Business conference. I used to randomly just go to business events, hoping that I would perhaps understand how to run my business. And sadly, in those days when I did go in 2012, I found that a great deal of the business conversations were dealing with export. And I just couldn't see the path in education, I couldn't join any dots to support my business. So I thank Ms. Dorothy Tuma, who has held my hand since then, and will make time wherever she is in the world to just listen to my progress, how Autumn Studios is doing, what we need to do, and she's always asking me, how can I help? And for me, for a mentor that asks those questions, I am eternally grateful. Ms. Dorothy Tuma is an expert on inclusive international development and business growth strategy. She's a regional, she's into regional trade, regional integration, and she's an expert in that and has been for the last 15 years in that development direction. Previously, she was a brand manager responsible for strategic planning and marketing with a US corporation for 10 years. Ms. Dorothy Tuma focuses on design of interventions to increase micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises access to opportunities for business growth in Eastern and Southern Africa, with a special interest in women traders, women entrepreneurs. Her work includes the design and delivery of training programs for business owners, as well as design implementation of business targeted programs for development partners, donor agencies as well. A seasoned speaker and conversation facilitator, Ms. Tuma has presented papers on various aspects of increasing the competitiveness of women-owned businesses in several regions and international fora. Ms. Tuma was previously the chair of the founding steering committee of the East African Women in Business platform, where we met, which brings together over 20,000 women entrepreneurs in 5 East African countries through their member-based associations. She holds an MBA from the University of California, Los Angeles, and an MPA from Harvard University, where she's been invited back from time to time to serve as a graduate teaching assistant. Ms. Dorothy Tuma, we are so glad that you could make time in your busy schedule to just share with us and open our eyes to the business mind in sports education, in physical education, because you have all this experience from around the world in building businesses and making models work. We can't wait to hear from you, to hear your wisdom in this regard. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Ms. Dorothy Tuma.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that warm welcome. And thank you to all the presenters, my fellow presenters, as well as the people online. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity and just a few minutes to talk about the situation that we're facing and the opportunity that it presents to us. Am I still muted? Okay. Great. Okay. Sorry. Do I need to rewind? It's a pleasure to be here, everyone. Thank you to Jacqueline. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to my fellow speakers, and also to the people online who are listening in, watching. It's really a pleasure to be here to speak about the situation that we're in regards to physical learning, physical activity, as well as what the opportunity is. And so, okay, if somebody can let me know if my slides are not advancing, okay. Great, super. All right, so when Mildred was speaking, she drummed up very warm memories of childhood and the times when it was a problem leaving the games that we were playing with our neighbors to come home and have tea or come home and have dinner. It was always a fight, but I remember with joy those happy days and all the activity that we used to do a very, very long time ago, at least it feels that way. But we find ourselves now in a situation where children are not going out to play anymore. When Junior asks his siblings to play with him, they hand him a smartphone. When Junior wants his parents to do something with him, they hand him a smartphone. When he wants to play, he's given a smartphone. So children nowadays are quite good with technology, which is not a bad thing. Where the situation becomes a bit challenging is they're becoming good with technology, able to take fantastic pictures that we can't even take as adults using a smartphone, but at the cost of having all this other physical activity that we were used to, or that we used to have as children. So what is happening to climbing trees? What is happening to being out there and jumping rope? What is happening to swimming and just going out there and having fun and spending all that energy that has been described to us by the previous speakers? We find ourselves in Uganda, where children, again, are not playing as much as they used to. Studies show that there's a very high prevalence of overweight and obesity. In a study that was done in Uganda by a consultant at Uganda's National Referral Hospital, Mulago, he found that 1/3 of school children were obese, that's 1 in 3, and 1 in 5 of school children were overweight. So in adults, the prevalence is even higher in peri-urban versus rural areas, and there's a clear reason for that. Obviously, less activity when you're in a peri-urban area, but also the kind of diets that we're consuming are contributing to this whole wave of health conditions that we're dealing with. So low physical activity, we're just not getting up and jumping around. We're just not as active as we used to be. Sedentary lifestyle, we like to sit around and we like to drive around and ride around instead of walking to get to our destinations. And also the perceptions that we have around weight and status. The heavier you are in weight, the more affluent you must be. And this becomes obviously a challenge later on with various health implications. So every challenge naturally presents an opportunity. So what I'll talk about very briefly is the opportunity to find ways to promote increased physical activity, because there are actually some income generating or revenue creating opportunities here for the family, for investors, for sports instructors, and for schools. Looking at the opportunity for the families. As families, we have an opportunity to deliberately promote the lifelong benefits of physical activity, which Mildred and Alison and Fred previously have all mentioned. So as parents, we have an opportunity to literally set our children on a strong foundation. Why? Physical activity is good for them, so it should be a lifelong focus. Physical activity is fun, and you just remember all that, as you grow older, you sort of start to reduce on the amount of physical activity you're engaging. But I'm sure you have fond memories, parents, of the joyous fun times that we had as children, just running around and being active. So it's fun. And we have the opportunity as parents to actually make physical activity a daily habit. Why is exercise not one of those lifestyle things that we adopt and that we continue to practice? So in the same way that we train our children to brush their teeth when they wake up in the morning and get out of bed, the same way that a child knows in the morning, one of the first things I'll do is have my breakfast. How about encouraging our children right from home to make physical activity a daily habit, something that they do every day? Because for all the reasons that have already been mentioned, it's a good thing. And lastly there, of course, we will not all become professional footballers or professional athletes, but there is definitely potential for professional sports. And people are making a lot of money, as Mildred referred in her presentation. People are making a lot of money from sports, but you will not discover that talent. Some people are more gifted in that area than others, but you will not discover that talent if you don't try and explore that arena. And a great time to explore that is actually at during those young formative years. Also, as a family or as parents, we have the opportunity to promote future good health. Exercise, we've been told, physical activity improves your brain health. It will help you manage weight gain. It reduces the risk of certain chronic diseases, and it strengthens your bones, and it strengthens your muscles. So in addition to all the benefits that were mentioned earlier around stimulating creativity, giving leadership skills, developing discipline in children, making them actually turning them into well-rounded people, you've got these are physical benefits that result from adopting physical activity. And so let us encourage our children to make it part of their daily activity, but let us facilitate that for them. And even for us adults, Of course, I'm guilty of the offense of not being as physically active as I could be, but being part of this presentation today and preparing for this actually made me realize I need to step up. This should be a lifestyle kind of thing, physical activity. When we look at the opportunity for investors, investors actually, one of the things that could be very interesting would be to, just as the supermarkets have done in our neighborhoods. I remember growing up as children, you'd have to go to town. You'd have to go to town to go to the supermarket. But now supermarkets are in the neighborhoods. Supermarkets are easily accessible. So if we follow that example and actually provide convenient access in neighborhoods, there is an opportunity to provide dedicated sports spaces in our neighborhoods. What would the value be to your target market? The value would be time savings. Nobody wants to deal with traffic as you're taking a child to go and exercise. If you have to cross through Kampala, you know you're going to devote a few serious hours to getting through the traffic jam. So providing dedicated sports spaces in neighborhoods will allow parents to save time because they can simply walk to the exercise space, which is also a physical activity, instead of sitting in traffic. Secondly, there's an opportunity to create a safe environment where families can enjoy that dedicated and child-friendly spaces that are devoted to exercise, in comparison to what we have to do today, which is go to a place that focuses on other adult activities. And this is where you're trying to get your children to swim or to attend a ballet class or this kind of thing. So creating that safe environment is an opportunity for investors. Physical activity instructors also have an opportunity to generate a reliable revenue stream. If you're an instructor, I encourage you to get the training, get the certification, so that you can develop and implement the curricula that incorporates physical activity in school programs. As an instructor, you can offer sports classes in communities, in neighborhoods, and in schools. And in fact, I know one sports instructor in Kampala who only does this part-time, but she's able to generate a stream of income of about 7 million shillings a month, which is about $1,800 a month, purely from teaching sports in schools and in communities at the request of parents, and she's doing it part-time, and she cannot feed the demand. There is so much demand for her service, so there's an opportunity for instructors. And finally, an opportunity for the schools. Schools that provide a strong physical activity program are actually able to differentiate themselves from their competition. So by offering physical activity, you have healthier students, physically, mentally, emotionally. You have well-rounded students. Because sports teaches you all the things we talked about. Previous speakers have mentioned discipline, teamwork, social skills, you name it. These are all skills that will turn out a well-rounded child. And also, schools can actively recruit these certified instructors to help them meet their physical activity objectives. Finally, for the schools could be a place that offers a physical space for physical activity in the community. So open your gates, schools, open the doors so that instructors who are looking for a place to be able to provide a service can do it in your schools. So to conclude, the opportunity is there. There is definitely an opportunity to promote increased physical activity for all the benefits that have already been mentioned, and the opportunity is there for family, it's there for investors, sports instructors, and schools. And with that, I conclude. Over to you, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dorothy Tuma, for such a comprehensive yet brief analysis of what's possible in communities. And I'm praying and hoping that the people viewing online are finding their part. If they're a parent, that they will find their way and find their children possible places to take them for these activities if their neighborhoods don't have enough resource, that if they have land perhaps to build these centers and then encourage this learning in their communities. What we know and what we must do is provide these activities for the children if the schools are not doing it, because we are the first people the children meet and know as parents as aunties and uncles before we really get to schools to carry on what we've been teaching the children. So I can't thank you enough, Miss Dorothy Tuma, for this comprehensive presentation on what's possible in our communities around the world. Yeah, so we're looking forward to hearing more. We've had a request from Zoom. People are asking for your presentations. If you would kindly share them, Miss Mildred Gamba and Miss Dorothy, please share your presentations to the people that are there online, because I think they want to review them again. Just so you know, all our viewers and listeners online, the possibility for you to keep this video and review it eventually or share it eventually is big. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel and you will be able to find the video there, and then the presentations will be shared in the group. I just saw someone talk about Mr. Fred Chigundu's presentation. For them, the flute and the lungs are the winner. Thank you for sharing that, because I think this person was expressing themselves because they're also, they have asthmatic issues. And so I think you sent them running to an instruction to learn flute and to blow some more. So thank you very much for those presentations and those words of wisdom. Before I invite our next speaker, I was just reminded today that we are in a season of World Cup. Yeah? So what I want to do is to wish all your teams the best. I pray that you all win. I don't know how you're going to do that, but beyond the competitions, that we realize that the people playing in the World Cup started somewhere. It was in their schools, it was in their communities, it was someone nurtured something and gave them an opportunity. And I pray that we can give our children the same opportunities, if not the same, even better. Miss Grace Ibanda is online. She's a physical creative facilitator. I first met Grace maybe 20 years ago, and I was just an innocent dancer who had an interesting posture, a bit of a slouch. And I remember one thing I remember about Miss Grace Ibanda is that, okay, she was tough, but she got us moving. And she was relentless about getting it right, you know. She's a seasoned dance educator, creative facilitator with close to 20 years experience with children and youth and adults in empowerment work as well. She has worked locally and internationally. She's a long-time serving member and co-founder of Okulamba Dance Theatre. As we get into the panel discussion, Miss Grace will be joined by Miss Christina, Dr. Christina Johnston, and Miss Jade Hall. Just allow me to read their biographies, because it's important that we put in context what they're going to be saying. Yeah. Miss Grace is a co-founder of Okulamba Dance Theatre Company, famed for multimedia dance theatre productions that tackle cross-cultural issues. She's the creative director with House of Talent East Africa, HOTEA, a Uganda cultural consultancy and cultural dance troupe that performs at many national and international events around the country. She's the director for programs with Center for Creativity and Capacity Development, CCCD, a social enterprise that uses the creative arts and multimedia and various research methodologies to creatively empower diverse populations of youth and adults in different forums. She's an assistant director and master teacher in dance education collaboration with New York University, Steinhardt, and Makerere University. She has taught extensively in universities, among them Makerere, New York University programs, and Chamogo University, and most recently, University of Chisubi in Kampala here in Uganda. In July 2022, under the collaborative initiative, she conducted a dance workshop with Tshwane University of Technology, TUT. She has participated in the first Sundance Institute Theatre Lab for East Africa and at Mandla Island in Kenya, and presented at NDEO New York in the past years. She's a lead facilitator in Uganda for Partnership for Youth Empowerment Global. And as an educator, Grace uses creative performing arts skills and knowledge, especially dance movement, to expand individual and group communication, expression, and exploration. She's a firm believer that the creative potential of individuals and groups alike can be unlocked using the arts to integrate and engage the whole person, spirit, soul, body, and mind. While Grace has particular interest in transformative works with the youth, loving to dance and using the body, she trusts that all persons can dance and so live more holistic, fun, yet rewarding lives. She is going to be on the panel with Dr. Christina Johnston, who is from University of Pretoria School of Arts, Drama in South Africa. Dr. Christina is a Belgian-South African dance artist and teacher. She has been a guest lecturer at University of Cape Town School of Dance and Makerere University of Performing Arts and Film in Kampala, where I met her. She recently completed a PhD in creative work at University of Witwatersrand and is currently based at the University of Pretoria School of Arts Drama. And she has a big interest and teaches movement and physical theater. On the panel as well, we have Miss Jade Hall, who is a movement analyst and author. Miss Jade is a performing artist and foundation phase educator in South Africa. She has 3 sons and 3 foster children. In 2013, she received her honors degree in drama and then went on to study early childhood development and teaching in grade R. Jade is currently in the process of becoming a CMA, Certified Movement Analyst, and is developing a series of books that can be used as a teaching tool for embodied learning and development for children. I welcome Miss Grace, Dr. Christina, and Miss Jade Hall to this conference and symposium. Thank you very much. Please take us away.
Thanks, Jackie, for the extensive introduction. It's really, really great to be here and to hear the presentation so far. You're certainly someone of really big ideas and you're advocating for such an important thing. And when you just said that you want everyone in the World Cup to be winners, I think it just speaks to your generous spirit and your generosity is also sort of given in bringing everyone together in this conversation. So really thank you for that. We're keeping it really informal. So what kind of connects myself and Grace and Jade at the moment is that we are all in a qualifying tier towards becoming Laban-Bartenieff movement analysts. Laban-Bartenieff movement studies is a framework and a vocabulary to look at human movement. And all 3 of us in different ways are really interested in education, in what movement and embodiment means to education. And just to start off the conversation, we're going to be informally sharing some of our experiences, but just to start it off, I'd like to share that what I'm picking up in the conversation so far is a kind of distinction between academia on one hand and physical practices on the other, that these are somehow separate things. And I think that this really speaks to the very much prevalent idea that the body is still separate from the mind, which is a fallacy, really. And so for us, I think what connects our practice is the idea of embodiment as first affordance. I'm borrowing from Ben Spatz's this concept, but that the body or our embodiment is really the interface, is the site at which we enter into the world, exist in the world, experience and learn in the world. And so the ideas of embodied cognition, embodiment, experiential learning are really central to all the things that we do. And what I'm also picking up in the conversation and what I'm responding to is this idea that education still, and I'm speaking from a South African context mostly, and I think Jade will speak more on this, is the problematic idea that education is a one-size-fits-all. Is that we tend to look at children, and even, I'm in higher education at the moment, I think we still tend to look at learners generally, even beyond childhood early years phases. We tend to look at them as one size fits all. And we certainly know, I think what we've heard from the practitioners so far is that children are really unique and diverse. And so I think that ways of looking at education through the lens of embodiment is about acknowledging diversity in the classroom, so neurodiversity in the classroom. And I found Ms. Gamba's comment that that attention may look really different in children. So if a child is not sitting still, that does not necessarily mean that they're not attending to the information. And yet somehow in our one-size-fits-all education, we still have this notion that to pay attention is to sit still in your chair. And I say one-size-fits-all education, but I think this is also still a very much, certainly in South Africa, a colonially informed education system and an apartheid-informed education system, where sitting still and certain classroom practices are very much informed by sort of colonial inheritances. So I've spoken a little bit about neurodiversity, which is important to us, the idea that children learn differently, that the body, our affordance is really, well, our body is implicated in all our learning. I think thinking through the lens of embodiment also brings the idea of language diversity into the classroom. You know, in South Africa, certainly we are sitting with a situation where most children are forced to learn in a language that is not their mother tongue. And so I think that when we expose children to learning through that colonial lens or through that colonially informed lens of education, we are not engaging children on a mother tongue level, and we're not engaging the diversity in the classroom. And then thirdly, I wanted to say something small about knowledge diversity, which is again about this false dichotomy between academia on the one hand and physical learning on the other. I think that concepts of embodiment and embodied learning, embodied cognition, experiential learning really bring together these ideas, that there is not one type of knowledge that holds more value, but that we are never separate from our bodies, and so that our body is always already implicated in our learning, and that this forms a way for us to look at knowledges as one not being more valuable than the other. So these are some of the thoughts that I'm taking away from the conversation so far. I'm going to hand over to Jade, who is working in really interesting ways with young children. Over to you, Jade.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you so much for having me and for everybody's time. Before, like Christina said, I'm just going to speak really informally a little bit about what I've experienced and a bit about what I'm doing. But if I could just start and ask everyone to block their nose with one hand, even if your camera is not on, if you could just do this for me, and sit on your other hand and close your eyes. And imagine now, having taken away your ability to touch or smell or see, imagine what it would be like to eat a meal. And when you're ready, we can let go of that and return to this space. And I think that's what's happening at the moment in education. We're expecting children to cut off senses and the way that information is received in the brain, and expected it to all be what in South Africa we often call chalk and talk. So we have one person who holds the space and holds the knowledge, they stand in the front of the class, everyone else has to sit still and be quiet, and then they speak and they write things on the board, and your options are to use your ears to listen, your eyes to see, and absolutely nothing else. When we understand that there's so many other senses and so many other ways that information gets through the body to the brain. And I often say there's no way for us to access the brain except through the body. Yet, again, like Christina said, especially in South Africa, we limit the way that the body accesses knowledge. Children are expected to sit in a certain way. And in South Africa, we have this thing called classroom management. So teachers come up with rhymes and sweet ways of controlling children, but the control is exactly the same. So we have one rhyme that I often hear teachers saying. They say 1, 2, 3, 4, put your feet on the floor, 5, 6, 7, 8, make your body nice and straight. And then they expect children to sit like that when they're 4 and 5 years old to receive information. It's quite crazy. So I teach mostly in grade R, which is the year before formal school, or supposed to be the year before formal school. And I think in other places it's called pre-K. So I've taught in this space for about 8 years, and each year it's like the curriculum gets more formal. So each year we see the assessments get a little bit more, and we see the expectations get a little higher. And at this stage, we assess children 4 times a year. And there are over 100 indicators that we assess children on in 3 formal subjects. So, and these children are 4, 5, some of them 6 years old. So it's really, really young, and it's really, really formal. There's very little play that happens in the classroom, and they have 2 breaks, but it's pretty much a lunchtime, and the breaks are 20 minutes each. So there's very little time for children to play. And when school is finished, they mostly go home. So some of them participate in sports curriculums, but that happens outside of the classroom space, and it is in no way linked to learning or the way that we are presenting information for children to ignorance to create knowledge. Yes, let me just check my notes quick. So we also see that the bigger problem perhaps is not that this is only happening in schools, but that the same restriction is also happening at home. So before children would walk to school, it would be a social event where as you walked along the road, you would collect other children walking to school, and children would learn to interact in a social way. They'd be walking, so they'd be exercising, they'd be moving into space, and they'd be traveling over time. And now children get into cars and are driven to school because of issues around safety. Children are no longer allowed to play outside in the streets, often indoors, not even allowed often into their own gardens. And then technology is a whole nother complex layer that's added to that. Our children are sat in front of screens or on iPads and tablets. And so the amount that their bodies move is pretty much this. So not only are their bodies being restricted in schools, but they're also then again being restricted at home. And I can fully understand that in South Africa there is a lack of resources, and we very often don't have enough schools within an area, and the government doesn't necessarily have money to develop public schools, and the private education is really expensive, so parents aren't able to always send their children to private institutions. And so what we see is that the classrooms just simply get bigger. So the more demand there is, the more children they'll push into the same classroom. So in order for a teacher to manage the amount of children she has in a class, she has to teach in this specific way, also because of the size of the room. So I understand that this is a much bigger issue than just saying, well, let's free our children and let them play. So my idea is, how do we take the model that exists, the children that are stuck in classrooms, take what's already valued in the curriculum and create a space with what we already have for embodied learning. So I'm in the process of developing picture books that are interactive, because something that's really big in South Africa, in the South African curriculum, is story time. Something that's given a big emphasis, like Dr. Christina said. Children are 9 times out of 10 learning in a language that is not their mother tongue. So there's a very big emphasis on language development, which I find very ironic, because we don't allow children to speak in classrooms, yet we want them to speak the language. It's crazy. The irony is ridiculous. But story time is something that is really, really important in South African schools. Every single day is ended off with story time. So I try to find a space where we wouldn't necessarily be adding something more to the curriculum. That's another expectation for the child that's taking more time in the already very formal day. And how do we adapt that? So how do we, rather than just saying, sit still, put your hands in your lap and listen to the story, only use your ears, how do we now create a space where children are still getting the benefits of books and stories and pictures, imagination, but how do we take it a step further? So instead of just telling an adventure story, make the books interactive, that children are jumping and imagining that they're climbing over things. And if they're fishing, that they're moving their bodies into space and pretending to fish, and that the body is involved in the story process as well. And we're still learning language. And now we also have mirror neurons that are firing because we're watching other children doing it, and it happens in a social setting, because stories are often done in small groups with a teacher or an assistant. So now I see my friends moving and I move and my friends move with me, and I feel a sense of community and belonging, and I am able to express myself through my body, yet I'm still getting the benefits that I am from a traditional story time in a traditional school or traditional way. Yeah, so that's what we're busy with here in South Africa. I don't know if there's any questions or if there's anything anyone would like to add or say. Otherwise, I'm going to give it back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Jade. Grace, over to you. So we've spoken a little bit from our South African perspective and sort of our observations from the conversation so far. I'm really curious to hear how you, what you might respond to from a Ugandan perspective.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Jade. And Jackie, thank you for collecting all of us and challenging us to go back into our bodies. The first thing I'm going to say, something I use a lot of the time, I say the body is not transport system for your head, which is what I think the education curriculum and a lot of the education that has dissected the body and given the head prominency in almost everything. Our bodies is how we live, is how we interact, is who we are, because the expression is in the body, it's not just the head. And whatever is happening in the head always must find expression in the body. Now, in Uganda, the Uganda curriculum has physical education as part of the subjects. However, a lot of the schools, even when they've said it should be compulsory, put it as an extracurricular activity. And because it's an extracurricular activity, it's choice. I have a choice to do this, I don't have a choice to do that. So a lot of people are not doing that. Now, we have a moment in the school system where we have things like musical festivals, drama festivals that cut across, but that competition level only then means a couple of young people in school are part of the school choir, they're the persons that are going to the act, the persons that are going to the dance, for a period of about 2 weeks in a whole year. Now, that brings about challenges in behavior. Everything that Mildred spoke about, I'm in total agreement with, and I have experienced it because I went to a school that physical education was part and parcel of who we are and how we behave. In school today, the emphasis is on grades. Even my nieces, I live with my nieces, their conversation is, I got this high grade, or I got 96, I got 97. It's never, I created this, I invented this, or this is the new game we're playing. So because of that lack of physical interaction with others, with the schools, with other children, there's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of, it's all about me, it's all about how I can prove you I'm smart. Which brings me to the idea that smartness then goes, as Christina said, to only the academic side. Or I'm smart because I get very high grades. We forget that the intelligences, if we all go, I think all of us are able to know about Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. We are all intelligent in different ways. However, because we are thinking or being conditioned, thanks to our colonial masters and the persons who are higher up refusing to think about how they are using their bodies anyway, we still have the idea that logical and mathematical, is the thing or the language. We forget that the physicality is what changes how we are. In my school, we had PE. This wasn't directed by the teachers. It was managed by the students 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and those were the best days. Everybody in my school had to dance. Everybody in my school had to learn how to swim. We all had sports and games. Now, today as adults, those things are what we remember in school and the ones that hold us as friends, because it's just a social capital we got from being able to spend time together, to learn from each other, to lead each other, to negotiate space, time, resources, to figure out how to be people together. When we bring back physical education into school, experiential learning, we are going to get people that are more ready to be creative, to work with other people, because regardless of how great you are, I'm a dancer. If I'm doing a solo, it doesn't matter how beautiful I am as a dancer. I cannot switch the lights on, at the same time play the music for myself, move the curtains. It's team. And the team comes in the body, in how the bodies interact. The body with itself, the body with other people, the body with the resources around us. Now, the place where I stay, young people go out the field because there's an innate awareness that physical movement, physical living is part of who we are. They always have a football match. This has nothing to do with the village council leading it. So you think, well, we need to play some game. They go out and play. The challenge is usually it is the boys, the girls stay at home. So it's also the social dynamic of, as Jed said, what are the restrictions? A young girl will not be allowed to go out and play because we are worried, as always, she's going to be raped, to become pregnant or something, or fall into bad company. So until we is a place where we start the idea of physically living, not just the only few things we do, cook and whatever, just use our bodies fully out, their brains are going to work better. The young people are going to have more faith and trust in themselves, because the control, the discipline of movement, of PE, of playing the flute, of, kicking the ball, that discipline is a discipline that we come with from the outside of the body into the other social spaces. A couple of years we worked an organization called In Movement, Art for Social Change. And the whole thing was, let's change, transform people through the arts. And when I mean the arts, we danced, we sang, we did the graphic art, there was acrobatics, and that helped to bring that group of young people and us facilitators together. We're all of different backgrounds. One of the main guys was an acrobat. He actually didn't have a lot of accolades as a academically, but his skill in bringing the young people together, and they create these fantastic things. Today they still go like, oh, where's Mark? I used those pyramids. I would also fall out, jump, and those are stories that now help build their their self-esteem, their confidence. And for me, what I'm taking away from this place is to ask myself every day, in whatever line of work I'm doing, am I bringing the body into it? Am I using the body? Because it's not just about the teachers learning to do PE. They are not going to learn to do PE, but we that are able, what are we going to do to bring the body back into the learning spaces, into the relationship spaces? My final thing is, I do a little bit of communication skills with young people that are in an art school. The art school, they're all about graphic, 3D animation, everything that is computer, which I am kind of in the other age, born before computers did this, yeah? So I don't quite understand. But the one thing I bring is, in my class, we will move, we will dance. And when there is something in the middle of the student will be like, Grace, can you possibly have a little movement? I say, yeah, sure. Then I'll let them guide that. But I've noticed because of that, I've got children opening up to me and telling me difficult challenges they have because I'm accessing them through the movement, through their bodies. They will come and tell me things their parents do not know about them, and how then we can, then from that I can kind of start conversations about how they can shift and learn better. So for me, the body must always be a unit. The brain is wonderful, but the brain and all the inventions in the world are physically expressed. If I think of movement in my head and I don't show it, if I think of a PE routine, I don't show it. If I think of something and I don't write it, all of that comes, the head, the brain must always have expression through the body, to that idea of embodied learning all of the time in every situation. So thank you again.
Thanks so much for sharing these provocations. It's so great to see comments popping in the chat. We're certainly happy to take any further questions or to allow the conversation to unfold. Jackie, you will guide us here. In conclusion to our little conversation or our contribution this afternoon, is that it's not thinking or moving. It's not academia or the body. But I think we are really advocating for understanding that embodiment is our primary interface. This is how we engage with the world. And I think that education can truly shift when we start to look at more than a one-size-fits-all way of learning. Thanks so much, Grace, Jade, Jackie, and other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Christina.
for that comprehensive sharing that you both, the three of you, have put forward in your experiences. That's a wealth of information that we'll carry forward, I'm sure. Online is Miss Jill Pribble, Grace and Christina. You know Miss Jill? She's a dance professor from many years ago. I'm going to invite Miss Jill to share her experiences. She still lives in Uganda and is a teacher at International School of Uganda. I'm so honored that she could attend because she's the one that believed in me and said, "Oh, stereotypically you have a dancer's body. Just come to class." And for so many years, she paid for my learning at the Kampala Ballet and Modern Dance School. Miss Jill Pribble, it's an honor to have you on this conversation. In this conversation, please, you're welcome to share your remarks as well. Miss Jill, are you there? All right, maybe there's something technical happening on her side, but we will wait in. We have a few minutes before this conversation closes. First of all, I would like to thank again everyone that's on the stream listening in. Keep those comments coming in, and in a few minutes we'll be sharing those that you have requested for us to share. But just to remind us why we have this symposium, we're advocating for more physical learning in our education systems globally. You've had the comments from Ireland with Miss Alison Bach. You've had the comments from South Africa, from Uganda, from the US with Miss Dorothy. You've also had Mr. Fred Chigundu share about music and how, because of blowing the flute and playing it, his lungs got better, which amazed his doctors. Right now, I would like us to listen to Miss Jill. Miss Jill, are you there? It's amazing. We're in the middle of at the end of a school day, and so it's interesting that we can actually have Miss Christina online or have Miss Mildred join us, because school is supposed to be ending right now and they must be very actively involved in how school ends and what happens thereafter with the children. So yeah, it's such a delight to have you all, to really have your experiences and to hear the things you believe in and hold as truth for education in your respective capacities. I'm just going to check again if we have Miss Jill online. Okay, sorry. We missed the opportunity to listen to her. But what I want to do is take us to the questions. You said, Miss Jade, you said that you work with children in grade R, and grade R is the class before kinder. What are the things that have inspired you to keep going and to develop the curricula that you're writing right now? What has been the inspiration behind all of that?
I think it's twofold. I think it's the children that I work with in the classroom, but then also my own children at home. Or I think it was even exaggerated more with my own children. And I could just see that children because I'd studied in the performing arts, I think I naturally brought a freer, more creative space for children to learn in. And I could see how I got so much more out of my students when I was teaching in that kind of way that was slightly untraditional than I was when I was trying to drill things into them and getting them to regurgitate that information back to me, which is pretty much what the curriculum is asking us to do. We just need to check off boxes. We write the child's name at the top and then we go yes or no, yes or no, yes or no for 100 indicators. And I saw that this isn't serving the children that I'm teaching, and it became even more of a burning thing for me when I understood that my children would be taught in the same way. And I kind of felt, how do I change this for my boys? How do I make this different? Because for me, learning is not about receiving a certificate at the end of the day to say, well done, you've completed school, but how do I create these well-rounded human beings who are inquisitive about the world and who can think and who can speak and who can understand the world around them and other people and have interesting relationships? And how do I create little functioning humans rather than just ticking boxes? And I think that's probably the thing that's really pushed me and kept me going, because it's very frustrating to make progress in a system that's so much bigger than what we are.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jade, for those remarks. It is actually frustrating to just see children who have potential not develop as much because they're not given the opportunity to. I have a story. Once I've worked with a child that was autistic. Her name must have been Grace, I think. She was with us for about 3 months, and I could see in progress in her body and in her learning and in her attention span in 12 classes, you know. And for me to see a 5-year-old evolve in their motor skills, in their speech, in their concentration, because we opened our doors to children of all kinds, of all abilities, was really, really a blessing. And so even as we do our teaching, to see, for me, the most rewarding part has always been to see children evolve in their learning and for them to discover their abilities physically and mentally and then be vocal about them. We're glad to have Miss Jill Pribo online. She was busy closing her day at school, but I see she's in the art room somewhere at ISU. Miss Jill, earlier I just spoke about how you're the reason I was dancing beyond, straight into my 20s and further on. I thank you so much for the privilege and the opportunity you gave me in dance when we met. And yeah, you're welcome to this symposium. Please, you're welcome to share your remarks, and yeah, bless us with your words.
So thank you so much, Jackie. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, I am in the art room at ISU. We have a giant new art center, so I have a very big art room. We have a lovely 350-seat theater, and we also have a dance studio with a sprung floor. Just to thank you so much. I've been listening. I just had some students in here that I had to send away to where they were going. But what I've noticed the most, and what I keep coming back to in the field of education, is where has Howard Gardner gone? Now, Howard Gardner developed the theory of, and in one of those, intelligence is intelligence. And that became a very popular, probably about 20 years ago, it became very popular and everyone jumped on to this idea. But since then, it's faded away and we've gone back into academics. So I think somehow we need to advocate for different types of intelligences within our school system so that we can allow students to really thrive in the areas of strength. And not everyone, I know that we keep going back to how physical intelligence or kinesthetic intelligence helps with other things that you are doing, but I do think that it is a valid subject in and of itself. So I'm advocating to revive Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences so that we can make sure that kinesthetic or physical intelligence becomes as important as mathematical, as all of these other intelligences that he came up with, so that we can get it back on the table, because I think, unfortunately, it has faded away. So thanks, Jackie. Thanks for inviting me. And thanks to all the speakers who were quite wonderful today. I appreciate all of your intelligences and listening to your insights.
So, Miss Jill, thank you so much for making even a moment to speak and share your experiences and your views in learning. And of course, online we have Miss Dorothy Tuma, Mr. Fred Chigundu, Miss Jade Hall, and Miss Grace, and I think Miss Mildred Gamba, who have shared extensively about the importance of physical learning and education. I like the part where Miss Dorothy Tuma mentioned something about the ability to make so much in finances to sustain someone to do this as a part-time job, which can be a full-time job, because I think every time I've seen Miss Mildred at school, she's just running from one class to another. So if someone is able to make that much money in a part-time job, how much more if someone run a center, a center for physical learning activities that go beyond the school? Because like we said earlier, children are only getting 24 hours of physical learning. I don't know, Miss Christina, are you able to share how many hours of learning? Miss Jade, Miss Jill, are you able to share how much of physical learning the children are getting in your schools currently?
So in grade R, the curriculum requires that children do 2 hours a week. But like I think Grace mentioned, very often that doesn't happen. So if we're behind on assessments, or if there's something that needs to happen academically, then that task is moved into the physical activity time. And then they will, when government, because often if there's audits or something and government comes to check schools at department level, they'll then account for hours where children are having lunch as part of their physical activity, because they're running around outside. And so that can make up the 2 hours in a week. So it's 2 hours, but sometimes it's actually technically nothing.
Miss Christina and Miss Grace?
I can't speak to, in mainstream education, really the amount of hours. I don't deal so much with what we call here the CAPS curriculum. But just from my perspective as a parent, I have a son who is deaf, and so he's in a special needs school. And so what I notice is that actually there are some very different strategies, learning strategies and educational strategies that play in this special needs school, where children seem to be, where there seems to be more of an incorporation of this type of embodied learning and experiential learning, the multiple intelligences that Jill is also referring to. And so the thought that pops up to me at the moment, Jackie, is that there's much to be learned, I think, in the mainstream by turning to what is termed as special needs learning. And I wonder, Jill, if you wouldn't mind also speaking to the idea of neurodiversity in the classroom, because I know that you're doing some quite different transformational work also with including different brain types in the classroom. I wonder if you wouldn't mind speaking on that for a moment.
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, fortunately, at the International School of Uganda, the children have 2 hours, 2 50-minute periods of PE per week, plus a 50-minute period of swimming. They have 2 50-minute periods of visual art. I also teach drama and dance, so that can be 2 periods of either art, drama, or dance. They also have 2 50-minute periods of music per week, so they get a lot of the arts, and it's very important within the curriculum. So in terms of neurodiversity, we're also an inclusion school, and the great thing about the arts is that it's the one area where the students, the intensive learning support has a class where children have more intense learning needs and they are in a classroom together. But when they come to their specialist subjects like swimming, PE, art, dance, drama, they do not come usually with a teaching assistant or a personal assistant. They come by themselves so that they're really included within the curriculum. And I feel that teaching children with different needs within that environment of the arts is so important for them, because it's a leveled playing field where they can actually be the experts at times. So that the arts and this physical, and even PE and swimming, it's so important for especially the neurodiverse students we have on campus.
We thank you so much, Professor Jill. Is Mildred still online? Mildred, are you still there? We'd like to hear your experience
Yes.
about what happens at Rainbow International School. How many hours children are getting in physical learning?
Okay, in physical learning, quite similar to ISU, we secondary run a 2-week timetable. So the younger children will get 2 hours of PE and 2 hours of swimming in those 2 weeks. So that's 4 hours. And the older children, actually, they get 4 hours of PE. So like in 1 week, you can meet them 3 or 4 times. But then we also have a very extensive extracurricular activity. And so for the clubs, we tend to encourage more physical activities. But then we also have drama. They have 1 hour of drama every week. They have 1 hour of music every week. And also when you look at the sciences, like they will mix it, the practical and the theory. But even I've also seen like English, sometimes it's not just sitting in the class. They will maybe take them to the field and explore. So there's a lot of physical learning incorporated in all the subjects. Geography, they'll go for field trips, so they will do practical learning. So it's really like very much incorporated in all aspects of the learning.
Wow, that just draws me to the imbalances we have in education in Uganda, because I teach in a school where only 24 hours have been given to children out of 108 hours of learning. And with all of that, it's the only, okay, they probably have 48, yeah, but that's not compared to what the children in ISU or Rainbow are getting. And that for me is a disparity in learning. These children are going to compete for the same jobs in the same job market, and surely you can know and tell that the ones that have more exposure in how to solve social issues and how to get about, in their movement, in their mental understanding of and perception of learning, then have more privilege than the ones that are getting less hours in learning. And so what we're advocating for is more learning, but equal learning for children. So if you're not getting it at school, perhaps the parents should then think about what other options are there in the holidays or over the weekends for this. We have a few questions coming in to Grace, from Grace to everyone. No, Baka is saying, for sure in Uganda, mostly in private schools, the main emphasis is put on academics and teachers are put on pressure for marks. Sports mainly is not considered. That's very true. And then someone mentioned, these are just comments from people that are listening in, which we're grateful for. P is not examinable, and so not as important. But why should it be important? Because it's examinable, I wonder. How is, sorry, I'm just, for sure, no, just scroll up, please, if we could just go up. Yeah. How is the set of running schools? Is be scheduled weekly? Yeah, that's been really shared. It's timetabled right now. Keep those comments coming in. and let's get this conversation rolling. This is the beginning of the conversation, I believe. We cannot comprehensively cover all that we need to cover in education to bring about the reforms that we want to see and equal opportunities we want to give the children in communities across nations. But it's the beginning of this conversation, and so we're going to keep this video on YouTube at Autumn Studios Kampala, and we will continue these conversations perhaps in more focused forums, so that we can then come up with ideas on how to further physical education in communities, because we cannot put it on the schools. The schools have only so much time. What about the communities in which those children live and come from? Yeah. Before we close, I'm just going to give an opportunity to all the presenters tonight to give us some closing remarks, and yeah, we'll call it a day, an afternoon. Grace, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, everyone. Like Jackie said, it's a conversation that I think we need to move forward in our own little ways. My one thing to say is PE, I think we should advocate for it, or the arts to be part of the curriculum, so they are really not extracurricular. It's part of the expectations, and find ways to train people that can teach and create up curriculums that could be examinable, because then within the system that gives it more credence, and it's not taken as a waste of time, where many parents want their children not become artists, not become soccer players or anything, but they all want them to become medical doctors. So I think there's also a space to advocate for the physicality of the arts, versus just thinking we're all just supposed to have scientific heads and not be able to use our bodies in the space. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for those remarks. I would like to give this opportunity to Mr. Fred Chigundu to share with us some his closing remarks. Thank you very much. Mr. Fred, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jacqueline, for inviting me here to be a part of this. Yes, as just to add on to what Grace said, it's sad that these things are not thought of as being very important, especially in the local context, whereas in the international schools, as we've heard in Rainbow and ISU, there's a big opportunity for children to have these experiences. I think the key thing is about getting more and more awareness amongst our local educational practitioners of the importance of the arts, of physical movement in all these in the general learning, but as well as also in understanding that these are not just optional, but they are important in the development, the complete and holistic development of a child and of human beings in the space, to continue to grow and develop in all sides of human being, mentally, spiritually, and physically, to make holistic and important members of the community. So I think this has been a great discussion thus far, or a discussion opener, and thank you very much for organizing this.
Hey Fred, before you go off, you need to tell us more about the programs at the Kampala Music School and how many hours the children there are getting, because I think we didn't hear that from you.
Because we are a specialist music school, the kids get as much time as they want. But we have in the holiday program, in the holidays we have a program which we run whereby kids are here from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and they just they do a lot of singing, a lot of rhythm work, a bit of dance work, local music, and pick up whatever instruments they have, and We let them run around the area. So during the holidays, they absolutely love it and look forward to it. So we are really glad that we're able to fill in that space. But we consequently see a big void in the schools, and it's just incredible how often. I mean, even as this term was coming to an end, the number of phone calls we've been getting from parents saying, can we take part in this program is just really incredible. Yeah. But we also on a regular time we do teach instruments and vocal lessons on a one-to-one basis, and also have some of our teachers going to several schools to teach music in those schools as on request from head teachers and music teachers, because both have to be on song, otherwise it never takes off. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chigundu, for those remarks and that wealth of information that we need to forge a way forward for our children, for all to access music, for all to access physical education beyond what's been given right now. I'd like to just invite Ms. Dorothy Tuma to give us her final closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jacqueline, and thank you to everyone online and fellow presenters. So it's been a very interesting couple of hours, and I've learned quite a lot. I think that in terms of the call it sort of the neglected child of the non-academic activity that can take place in schools, I think it's a matter of really shifting mindset. We've got to do things that will shift the mindset of parents, because if parents value the arts, if parents value sports, if parents value dance and all those other activities, then they will demand it. They will demand it from the schools, and they will look for schools that provide this to their children. But there's an opportunity to educate, I think, the population about the value. I've been listening all along and wondering, okay, is it too late for me at my age to actually become a little more physically active? Just from listening to this conversation, I'm wondering what I can do. And I see Alison shaking her head. No, I can do it. But it's because, somehow it's almost like, that it's good to eat healthy, but you eat unhealthy because it's convenient, and so, but how do you bring this knowledge that all these things are actually valuable to the population and create and have that shift in mindset so that parents are demanding it because they see the value in it, so that it's not just sort of this hidden secret that a few privileged people know in society, and the rest of the population is unaware. How do you make it mainstream? And I think I want to issue a challenge to Autumn Academy and to you, Jacqueline, to say, look, what can we do to publicize, to make public Kampala School of Music? I know you have these concerts every once in a while, but what can we do to proactively actually move the needle for the population to appreciate the value of these other ways of the multiple intelligences, as has been mentioned. So I think for me, that's it, because you shift the population, the money is going to go where the opportunity is. And so get the population to think differently, advertise, make these things accessible, write in the papers, and proactively think about how this can be taken forward. And I think there's also a challenge to think of what are the practical things, step 1, step 2, step 3, that can be done to make this a reality, because I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's underappreciated. And yet I see, even from my own, the children that I'm involved with, the ones who are actually very actively engaged in multiple streams. I mean, I have a niece who goes to Rainbow, and so I am familiar with how much effort and how much emphasis the school puts on those activities. So for me, it's really to wind up, shift mindset, get the population to shift mindset, but make these things visible, accessible, get the information out there, change will come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dorothy Tuma, for the time and the wisdom We'll take those notes home and we'll work on how to get the whole population thinking the same as we are, because I don't know where we're headed with education, but the future for our children is in empowering them with all access to physical learning, to just make the world better and to solve the crisis of their time. I would like to call upon Miss Christina, Dr. Christina Johnston, to give her final remarks before she dashes off.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm so inspired by the conversation today. Really thank you to all the speakers. I mean, from Fred to Mildred to Dorothy, Alison, and then most especially Jade and Grace. Thank you very much for, and Jill as well, but thank you for just joining me and being able to share these provocations. I think, you know, this is a starter conversation. There's so much more to say. But I think we can't underestimate the value and the importance of communities of practice, and that does sound like what this is. This is a real community coming together to advocate and to exchange around a particular topic. For me, at the core is really a question of diversity. So diversity in terms of the knowledges, the practices that we value within education systems, diversity of language, and diversity of the child themselves. So the diversity in ways of learning, right? Children learn in so many different ways. And so I think that by looking towards embodied learning, towards physical learning, I think this is a real way to kind of honor and bring back that kind of diversity into the classroom. So on that note, thank you very much for the inspiring event. I've learned a great deal from everybody today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christina. We will have our final remarks from Ms. Mildred, and then we will move on to Jade. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for the opportunity to share my knowledge. But for me, I think my closing remark is it shifts back to us, the parents and the teachers and the nieces. Most of the time, especially speaking on behalf of Uganda, we have a blame game. We believe there is somebody else who is supposed to do our jobs. And learning starts from home. As parents, if we encourage our children to participate, then in schools also they will demand for it. For example, I have an 8-year-old son, and he's in everything. He sings, he swims, he plays football, he plays basketball, volleyball. In fact, sometimes we don't even have enough hours in the day for him to be able to do all that. But I get the importance of it because from each activity he's doing, there's something else that he learns from that. So like Dorothy said in her presentation, I think it goes back to us as the community. And probably maybe the most important thing for us as Uganda, we need to understand that dance, PE, is not an art, actually. It's a science because it deals with the body, and anything to do with the body falls under science. So maybe if we start calling it a science, it might attract more attention to it because we are fascinated by science. I mean, our science teachers were given double the pay than the art teachers. So we need to start addressing it as a science. But to me, I think what we need to focus on is ourselves. If all of us take a challenge and start to do some form of exercise and we see the benefits of it, then it will help us to encourage our children. So for example, I know most of us struggle with sleeping, but if you just take time and maybe do a 10-minute exercise, you will sleep much, much better. So if we start to practice, it's easier for us to implement what we practice other than implement what we think it should be. So let's all get practicing, and then you will find that there will be a knock-on effect, and also the schools. And also, if I remember, when in primary school, we did not have PE timetabled, actually, as it wasn't even part of the curriculum. But because we were interested, we were engaged. So during the break time, the lunch time, after school, we always participated without the teacher's supervision or anything organized like it is probably right now at Rainbow. But the interest was always there. So let's rejuvenate that interest in our children, and then we shall have that knock-on effect that we're looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mildred, for those awesome closing remarks. I would like to invite Miss Jed to share her closing remarks as well.
I would just like to echo what everyone else has said. Thank you so much for this opportunity to start this conversation and to really start to think about this more. And I was just thinking about, as a mother, you know you have a child when you feel it move inside of you. It's like movement is the beginning of life. And then we move as young children. The younger your child is, probably the more they move. And as they get older, they move less and less. And as adults, as we get older, we move less and less until eventually every cell in our body stops moving. So perhaps this isn't just something that's important, but maybe the most important, because movement is life. And we know we're alive because we're moving, and cells in our bodies and hearts are beating, and there's systems that are moving. And movement is the beginning and end of our life. And I think if we give this that kind of priority, I think we'll see a huge shift in our world and in our children. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful.
Thank you for the time that you've given of your knowledge. And lastly, but not least, we have Miss Allison to give her closing remarks. Miss Allison, you're welcome. Sorry, we don't seem to be getting you. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just so impressed by all the people across Africa and of African and European origin who have been speaking today, and just your grasp and understanding and experience of the value of physical learning. And it's been wonderful. But my thoughts would be, this should be made available for all across all levels of society, the rich and the poor, because there's so many children in large classrooms and teachers not experiencing what you are understanding and expressing. So that would be one of my wishes for Africa in particular, and that just again, that physical learning be resourced, valued, and be inclusive of all children and people of diversity in origin, in ability, in thinking, and that there would be progress. And I would hope that even from this forum today, something might be moving forward in the countries represented. So thank you, and keep it going, Jacqueline. You need to follow this through, and you know, there's hope for change, because we in Ireland, we've come a long way, and you know, the things that you're talking about there are rolled out nationally across the country, so that all children can access the benefits of physical learning and creativity and sport, and their academic progress is benefiting. So thank you very much.
A special thank you to all of you, our speakers, that were able to take off just more than 2 hours to be a part of this opening project. It's the first ever. I know we're going to have very many conversations that will perhaps cause us to then bring about reforms in our nations, in education. I can't thank you enough for sharing your experiences with us, and we hope that we can draw from this and take it to the next level and get the right people on table to bring about these reformations that we need for our children in education. I would also like to thank Apt Media, who have made it very possible for us to be in the same room across the world, and Hydrogen Studios, who have supported this project from its beginning when I first whispered it in Mr. Hector Mutebi's ears. Again, special thank you to the people that are watching. You made time in such an interesting season of your lives. It's 1st December, and you started off your December with a conversation about education for children. We can't thank you enough. Thank you very much, Esther, Rachel, Magusho, Kampala Music School is logged in as well, Peter, Doreen, Jotham, Lodwin, Robert, Michael, Kwesiga, Annette, thank you so much, Rachel, Nalugwa, there's tons of you. I pray that, Mrs. Catherine Muyinda, my mama. Who else? Let me see. There's tons of you. Robert, there's someone that didn't care to label and put their name. iPhone, thank you so much for listening in and for your contributions. Keep sharing these conversations across the world. I know that someday soon, all our children will be accessing physical learning, physical education activity beyond what they have right now. Miss Grace, your hand is up for something.
Yeah, I'm wondering, could you please share the YouTube link again?
Yes, we will be able to share it. It's going to stay live on YouTube, and we'll have very many people. We'll promote the feed for people to watch. Those that have missed it that are still at work. Yes.
Because I've got a couple of people that actually logged in late and they were wondering about it. That's why I asked.
The stream is going to stay online for as long as we want it to stay online, for those that will want to catch up later. So thank you for that feedback, Miss Grace. Otherwise, I would like to call this to a pause, not a full stop, a pause. See you soon, I hope. Have a blessed week and a blessed month. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Welcome to Autumn Studios. My name is Autumn has been home of physical learning to children and youth in communities and schools for the last 10 years. Our focus has been dance. Every child deserves an opportunity to engage in physical learning. Self-discovery of every child starts when given an opportunity to play and express themselves. We've witnessed restoration and diverse levels of development as we worked with children and youth of all ages. Autumn Studios will be hosting the first ever Sports Science Global Symposium on 1st December 2022. The event will be live on the Autumn Studios Kampala YouTube channel. The symposium will bring educationists, parents, sports trainers to the table to discuss how best to increase physical learning in curricula globally. That is the beginning of innovation in their world. Subscribe to our channel and be part of this event. Contribute to the conversation, and let's give our children a relevant education.